If you walked through the ruins of Cahokia in modern-day Illinois, scraped away the sediment, and analyzed what was stored in the ancient granaries, you wouldn't find corn. You wouldn't find wheat. You would find the tiny, lentil-sized seeds of a plant that most modern Americans consider a weed. A plant so nutritionally complete that NASA seriously evaluated it for long-duration space missions. A plant that once fed more people in North America than maize ever did. This is a plant with a dual identity that exposes one of agriculture's greatest cover-ups. To the archaeologist, it is the grain that built the mound cities of the Mississippi. To the biochemist, it is one of the few plant foods on Earth that contains all 9 essential amino acids in ratios that rival red meat. This is the story of goosefoot, Chenopodium berlandieri, known to the ancients as pitseed goosefoot and to modern industrialists as an inconvenient truth. It is the crop that sustained pre-Columbian civilizations for 4,000 years, fed the Andean highlands, and then was systematically erased from American agriculture. Welcome to Ancestral Yields. If you want to understand how an entire food system can be rewritten by colonial powers, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's excavate the goosefoot conspiracy. To understand the magnitude of what we lost, we have to travel back to approximately 2000 BC, to the Eastern Agricultural Complex, a term archaeologists used to describe the indigenous food system of Eastern North America before corn arrived from Mexico. This wasn't a primitive hunter-gatherer society waiting for European civilization. This was a sophisticated agricultural civilization that had domesticated at least 8 crops, and goosefoot was the crown jewel. Archaeological excavations at sites like Russell Cave in Alabama, Newt Cache in Kentucky, and the Riverton culture sites in Illinois have uncovered carbonized goosefoot seeds in storage pits, sometimes by the thousands. Paleoethnobotanist Gail Fritz from Washington University has spent decades analyzing these seeds under electron microscopes. What she discovered changed our understanding of American agriculture. The seeds weren't wild. They had been selectively bred. Wild goosefoot seeds have a thick, dark seed coat designed to survive passing through a bird's digestive tract and to delay germination for years. The ancient seeds found in archaeological contexts had thin, pale seed coats. They germinated immediately. They were 30 to 40% larger than their wild ancestors. Someone, over thousands of years, had turned a weedy annual into a domesticated grain crop as sophisticated as anything in the Fertile Crescent. And then, around 900 AD, something remarkable happened. Maize arrived from Mesoamerica. For about 400 years, goosefoot and maize coexisted. The mound-building cultures of Cahokia, the largest city in pre-Columbian North America with a population exceeding London at the time, grew both. But around 1300 AD, goosefoot began to disappear from the archaeological record. Not because it failed, not because maize was superior, but because maize had one critical advantage. It was a political crop. Maize could be controlled. It required cleared fields, intensive labor, and hierarchical organization. Goosefoot was a democratic crop. It grew in disturbed soils, required minimal maintenance, and could be cultivated by individual families without central authority. As the Mississippian chiefdoms consolidated power, they pushed maize cultivation because it reinforced the social hierarchy. By the time Europeans arrived in the 16th century, goosefoot had been relegated back to a semi-wild food source. The colonists, seeing Native Americans eating what they considered pigweed, dismissed it as evidence of primitive agriculture. They never bothered to look in the middens to see what had been lost. But goosefoot didn't just thrive in North America. On the other side of the continent, high in the Andes Mountains, a close relative was becoming the backbone of an empire. Quinoa, Chenopodium quinoa, is the domesticated descendant of the same botanical lineage as North American goosefoot. The Inca called it Chisaya mama, the mother grain. It was so sacred that the Inca Emperor would plant the first seeds of the season using a golden spade. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in 1532, they encountered vast terraced fields of quinoa stretching across the Altiplano. The grain sustained armies, fed cities at 12,000 feet above sea level where wheat couldn't grow, and provided complete nutrition in a landscape that offered few animal protein sources. The Spanish response was systematic suppression. Colonial authorities banned quinoa cultivation, forcing indigenous populations to grow European wheat and barley instead, even though these crops yielded miserably at high altitude. Churches labeled quinoa a pagan food, associated with indigenous religious ceremonies. For 400 years, quinoa survived only in the most remote Andean communities, grown in secret by Quechua and Aymara farmers who refused to let it die. Then, in the 1980s, Western nutritionists finally analyzed quinoa's nutritional profile. What they found shocked the scientific establishment. So how does a crop with that kind of resume get reduced to wheat status in its homeland? To understand why goosefoot was abandoned requires understanding what industrial agriculture actually selects for, and it has nothing to do with nutrition. Modern crop breeding prioritizes 5 characteristics: mechanical harvestability, uniform ripening, long shelf life, visual appeal, and response to synthetic fertilizers. Nutrition is not on the list. First, goosefoot has indeterminate growth. Unlike wheat or corn, which ripen all at once allowing a single mechanical harvest, goosefoot seeds mature progressively over several weeks. In traditional cultivation, this was an advantage. Families could harvest continuously, but you cannot program a combine harvester to make that distinction. The machine would harvest everything at once, mixing ripe seeds with unripe seeds, creating a product with inconsistent moisture content that would spoil in storage. Second, goosefoot seeds contain saponins, bitter compounds concentrated in the seed coat that deter birds and insects. In wild populations, saponins can make the seeds unpalatably bitter, requiring labor-intensive processing. You have to either wash the seeds repeatedly or rub them vigorously to abrade the coating, a process called pearling. The ancient Americans had developed low saponin varieties, but that trait was lost when cultivation ceased. A seed company cannot patent a crop that requires hand processing. Third, the seeds are tiny. A single goosefoot seed weighs approximately 1.5 to 3 milligrams. You need roughly 200,000 seeds to make a pound. By comparison, a corn kernel weighs about 300 milligrams, 100 times heavier. When you are selling grain by the bushel, size matters. The market selects for appearance, not nutrient density. The final nail in goosefoot's coffin was its family reputation. Goosefoot belongs to the Amaranthaceae family, which includes some of the most notorious agricultural weeds in North America: lambsquarters, pigweed, tumbleweed, and Russian thistle. In the 20th century, as herbicide-based agriculture became standard practice, chemical companies developed broad-spectrum herbicides targeting this exact plant family. Atrazine, one of the most widely used herbicides in corn production, was specifically formulated to kill Chenopodium species. If you tried to grow domesticated goosefoot in a conventional agricultural system, the herbicide regime designed to keep fields clean would kill your crop along with the weeds. By the 1970s, domesticated goosefoot had effectively gone extinct in North America. No seed banks, no germplasm collections, no USDA preservation efforts. When ethnobotanists finally started looking for it in the 1980s, they found nothing. The genetic lineage that had been carefully selected for 4,000 years was gone. Meanwhile, quinoa was experiencing a global renaissance, marketed as an exotic Andean superfood. By 2013, the United Nations declared it the International Year of Quinoa. Health food stores in Manhattan were selling what Andean farmers couldn't afford to eat anymore. But almost no one made the connection. The grain being celebrated as a South American miracle food was nearly identical to the crop that once fed North America. To understand what we destroyed, we need to look at what goosefoot actually contains. According to analysis published in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis, goosefoot seeds contain between 14% and 18% protein by dry weight, comparable to wheat at 13% and significantly higher than rice at 7% and corn at 9%. But the protein quality is where goosefoot becomes extraordinary. Most plant proteins are incomplete, meaning they lack adequate amounts of one or more essential amino acids. Goosefoot contains all 9 essential amino acids in ratios that meet or exceed WHO recommendations for human nutrition. Specifically, it is exceptionally high in lysine, the amino acid that is deficient in most grains. Wheat contains about 2.8 grams of lysine per 100 grams of protein. Goosefoot contains approximately 6.1 grams. This makes it one of the only plant-based foods that can support human growth and development without requiring complementary protein sources. This is why the Andean populations thrived at high altitudes where animal protein was scarce. The micronutrient profile is equally remarkable. Goosefoot seeds are exceptionally high in manganese, providing approximately 2 milligrams per 100 grams, roughly 100% of the daily value. The seeds contain significant amounts of magnesium, typically 197 milligrams per 100 grams, compared to 143 milligrams in brown rice. Magnesium deficiency is epidemic in modern Western diets, contributing to hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Furthermore, goosefoot is rich in iron, containing 4.6 milligrams per 100 grams. For context, beef contains about 2.6 milligrams per 100 grams. The iron in goosefoot is non-heme iron, which is less bioavailable than heme iron from meat, but the seeds also contain high levels of vitamin C in their fresh greens, which significantly enhances iron absorption when consumed together. Perhaps most importantly, goosefoot is rich in folate, containing approximately 184 micrograms per 100 grams. Folate is essential for DNA synthesis and cell division, critical during pregnancy and early childhood. The fact that this crop, which provided complete nutrition, was replaced with corn, which causes pellagra when it forms the dietary staple, represents one of the greatest nutritional downgrades in agricultural history. The Mississippian decline in the 14th century coincides suspiciously with the transition from goosefoot to maize dominance. Some archaeologists now speculate that the shift to a corn-based diet may have contributed to increased disease burden and social collapse. But goosefoot didn't just disappear from fields. It disappeared from memory, and that erasure was deliberate. In the 19th century, as American agricultural colleges were being established under the Morrill Act, the curriculum was designed to promote European-style farming. Agricultural extension agents were sent into rural communities with a clear message. Traditional crops were primitive, modern crops were scientific. Native American agricultural knowledge was systematically excluded from land-grant universities. The USDA, founded in 1862, focused its research efforts entirely on Old World crops. Indigenous crops were not studied, not collected, not preserved. When the USDA finally established the National Plant Germplasm System in 1958 to preserve crop diversity, no one thought to collect goosefoot. It wasn't considered a crop anymore. The bitter irony is that while domesticated North American goosefoot went extinct, its wild ancestor, lambsquarters, Chenopodium album, is now considered one of the world's most successful weeds. It grows on every continent except Antarctica. Most gardeners rip it out and throw it away. But lambsquarters is nutritionally nearly identical to its domesticated cousin. The leaves are extraordinarily high in vitamins A, C, and K, with calcium content exceeding spinach. In essence, we spray herbicides to kill a plant that is more nutritious than almost everything we are trying to grow. But goosefoot didn't disappear everywhere. In India, Chenopodium album, known locally as bathua, remains a popular leafy vegetable, especially in North Indian cuisine. It is cooked into saag, mixed with spices, and eaten with flatbread. In rural Mexico, colites, the tender young shoots of various Chenopodium species, are harvested from the wild and sold in markets. In the Himalayas, a variety called tree spinach is cultivated in kitchen gardens. The cultural memory persisted in places where industrial agriculture hadn't completely dominated. But in the United States, the country where goosefoot was first domesticated, it is illegal in many jurisdictions through noxious weed laws. Many states classify Chenopodium species as noxious weeds, meaning property owners can be fined for allowing them to grow. For the American gardener interested in reclaiming this lost crop, the path forward is resurrection through wild relatives. Since domesticated North American goosefoot is extinct, the closest accessible option is lambsquarters, which grows wild across the continent. You don't need to plant it. It is probably already growing in your garden. Instead of pulling it out, let a few plants mature. They will grow 3 to 6 feet tall, developing thick central stems and branching seed heads. By late summer, the seed heads will be covered in tiny seeds. When the seeds turn from green to brown and begin to fall easily when rubbed, they are ready to harvest. Cut the entire seed head and hang it upside down over a tarp. As it dries, the seeds will fall. You will need to winnow the seeds to remove the chaff. The saponin coating can be removed by rubbing the seeds between your hands, then rinsing them in multiple changes of water until the water runs clear and no longer foams. If you want a more domesticated option, quinoa can be grown successfully in USDA zones 4 through 10, though it prefers cooler climates. Day-neutral varieties have been developed specifically for North American climates. Varieties like Brightest Brilliant and Cherry Vanilla perform well in northern latitudes. Plant quinoa in spring after the last frost in well-draining soil. It requires minimal fertilization. The plants will grow 4 to 6 feet tall and produce spectacular seed heads in shades of red, orange, yellow, or white. Harvest when the leaves have dropped and the seeds are hard. Processing is the same as lambsquarters: threshing, winnowing, and washing to remove saponins. Growing goosefoot is a commitment to remembering what was lost and reclaiming what should never have been taken. It is a crop that doesn't fit in the industrial model, and that is precisely why it matters. It is the grain that fed 3 continents, survived colonization, and still grows in your garden whether you want it to or not. It is the mother grain that refuses to die. If you enjoyed this deep dive into agricultural amnesia and nutritional archaeology, hit that like button. Subscribe to Ancestral Yields for more stories of the crops that were erased, the lies that replaced them, and the seeds that survived. We'll see you in the garden.